Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Dry Pink Dialogue. I'm your host, Scotty. I'm here with my co-host, Saur, and today we are talking about Miami Freedom Park. We're talking about Casemiro. We are talking about the next 10 games until Inter Miami breaks for the World Cup. I think this is going to be one of the most interesting 10-game periods that we could get because it is so unlike everything we've had in the Lionel Messi era, where it's always been go, 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 win, win, win. The next trophy is just around the corner. Let's go win it. And now instead we have sort of like a casual sort of run of games where the intensity is lower, the pressure's lower, the urgency is lower. And I think that's really interesting. But before we get into all of that, Sora, let's get to you. How are you feeling today, my man?
Feeling good. When you put it this way, that there's only 10 games left before the World Cup starts, that makes me feel like time is genuinely a social construct. How have we got so close to the World Cup already? It's been a whirlwind of a season so far. We've had 5 games, 7 games in total, but it feels like we've played a lot more. And now you're right. I think more than the intensity aspect, more than the casualty, it's about the pressure of how Inter Miami approaches the next 10 games. And I think there's genuinely a lot of room for growth for Inter Miami and to experiment and see what this team really is. I'm very excited for it. I'm excited to see what Javi Marchand and the coaching staff does over the next 10 games, how they approach it, what the players think about them, how they approach it. I think it's more about the pressure being slightly off and the handbrakes maybe being applied again to what has been a urgent period in Inter Miami's short 1.5 year history under Javi Mascherano. But we're going to talk about all of that. And then we have the game on Saturday, and we have a new stadium that we're going to look into, and we have a whole lot of things to be excited about. So I'm looking forward to all of that over the weekend. But before that, how are you, my friend?
I am. It's been weird without Inter Miami. It's been international break, and my team did not have a particularly good break or window. So I've kind of tried to disassociate from soccer for the last couple of days. But I am weirdly anticipatory for this game on Saturday, even though we're not going to be there, because it is the start of a new chapter, and I don't think we can know what that means until we see it in action. And so we'll talk about it, maybe our hopes and expectations and dreams for the new stadium and everything at some point in this episode. But like it's sort of building into something that could be really special. And I think that's really exciting. Let's start with some recaps of what's gone on over the last week or so. It was the international break. And so 11 Inter Miami players went to either their national teams or youth national teams to go get some minutes and show off. A couple updates. Sad on the one hand, Jamaica played the DRC this week, lost 1-0 on a extra time goal. I think the 110th minute by Axel Twanzebe for the DRC. And so Jamaica went home. They won their first game that they had to win against New Caledonia, but they lost in extra time against the DRC. So they are not going to be going to the World Cup, and that is very unfortunate for Ian Frey, who did play in that game on, I believe, Tuesday. On the flip side, Alex Shaw got his first appearance with the U.S. Youth National Team. He had a goal, so that was cool to see for a midfielder. But really, I think we have our World Cup eyes shaped up for Inter Miami, where they have 4 players. One of them, in Dane St. Clair, is going for sure. There's been some talk from Argentine sources that I don't necessarily believe that Messi and to a bigger extent Rodrigo de Paul maybe aren't going to be at the World Cup. I don't think there's any reason to give that any credence. So I think those 3 are locked into the World Cup. And then the one question mark is Herman Berterame, who did go play for Mexico this week, but I do know Mexico's having some injuries at striker. So I'm not sure if he's actually in the plan for the World Cup if everyone's healthy, but we will see. He's obviously still in the thought processes of the coaching staff there. So that's it, man. 3.5 players going to the World Cup. 3 to 4 players going to the World Cup. And the rest of the team is going to be sort of prepping for the rest of the season.
first of all, commiserations to Ian Frey. It would have been a fantastic 2 years for him after coming back from injury to be able to represent his national team at the World Cup would have been fantastic. But unfortunate to go out the way that they did against DRC. I don't think he played that game. I'm not sure, but
He came on in the second half.
second half, okay. But yeah, it's never fun. So I hope he can recover from it, and next time, hopefully next time. And then there's no way Messi is missing the World Cup, so let's not even entertain that thought. He scored a wonderful goal for the last week as well for his team. RDP, I don't think he's missing the World Cup, but I won't be surprised if he's not a starter for Argentina. So that would be an interesting story to keep an eye out for. Argentina's trying to, well, not build a new squad, but I think just give more minutes to players who are playing really high level football. And maybe Scaloni doesn't see RDP fit that mold, and maybe he's used as a sub rather than a starter. Would be interesting, but I still think he makes the World Cup squad. And then, yeah, Inter Miami has 3, 4 players going to the World Cup, which is a decent number, honestly. It's a really healthy number for an MLS team to be sending 4 players to the World Cup. Will be exciting. We'll keep an eye out for them when they're playing the World Cup. But the rest of the team continues the way that they do, and I look forward to international games over the summer. But before that, we have Inter Miami to think about. So, yeah,
Yeah, I actually don't think Miami will be at the top of the World Cup sendees for the MLS, if I'm being totally honest. And that's probably because they have a lot of players from Argentina that just aren't going to be a part of one of the best teams in the world, which is fine, but
yeah.
that's sort of how it goes. I would be shocked if Rodrigo De Paul doesn't go to the World Cup, and to me, it doesn't matter if he starts or comes off the bench because you're at the World Cup and you're having a chance to, you know, win and be a part of the World Cup. Like it's such a special experience that like just being there, I think is huge, and for him also,
And he's already a
got
World Cup winner.
exactly. So I won't feel bad for him if he plays one game in the group stage and then he's just sort of a bench option for the rest of the rest of the tournament. That's still pretty cool to go represent your country at that stage. Anything else from international duty?
Congrats to Alex Shaw, man. I forgot to say that, but that kid has had a great 2 months. He's had a
Great 2 weeks.
fantastic 2 months. 2 weeks,
2 weeks,
honestly.
really.
Yeah. I have high hopes for him. I think he might be another one that breaks through and actually cements his position in the Inter Miami team over the next 2 years. So won't be surprised if he actually continues to grow on this trajectory. Fantastic for him. Congratulations, and onwards and upwards. And maybe the last question I ask, and feel free to ignore if you've not made up your mind yet. I know you're not feeling great about the US men's national team right now with the results that they had. And I had said on the previous episode that they could beat Belgium, but I was clearly wrong. Um, what are you expecting, man? Do you think Argentina goes far? How do you think it's going to play out? And we don't have to talk about it for 5 minutes, but we'd love to get your thoughts on this. Because I feel like I'm getting more geared towards international football now than I have had in the last few months. Like I've been talking at work with my coworkers about Italy getting knocked out, not making the World Cup again for the first, like it's been 16 years since we've seen them on the World Cup stage, and they're Euro winners. So there's a lot of good conversations happening.
Yes, I will say a week ago we were on the podcast and I said, man, I'm getting really excited for the World Cup. Excitement dropped a lot when I watched the U.S. play. So maybe I'm not as fully invested. I will say Italy is clearly a baseball country now. The other thing I wanted to say is there was some crazy person in the Italian media that went on a ramble and wrote articles in the newspaper about how Italian soccer was dead in 2018 when they didn't qualify. And that person was right. And so I want to just shout out whoever that ended up being because, and by the way, they're not even good. Like if you watch them play, they are not even
They didn't
good.
deserve to go through. Yeah.
So,
You know what my hot take is? I don't think Argentina gets far. That's my personal feeling.
depends on what you mean by far because they're going to have a round of 32 So you're going to have
I think
an
round of
opportunity to start.
16. That's my call.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I'm not ready. I haven't done enough. I don't even know the Argentine team that well, if I'm being totally honest. There's just two players that I watch on a regular basis. So that's the World Cup, man. It's coming up, and we'll get excited for it. I think the U.S. is going to be. I think my big takeaway from this past window was the U.S. wasn't actually trying to win these games, which is really sad to say. What I mean by that is they put out a good lineup in the first half. In the second half, they started bringing on subs, and it got worse and worse and worse for them. So, if you're going full out 90 minutes with your best players, like I think there's more to the U.S. than what we saw.
I think they'll get
I'll leave it at that.
galvanized once the tournament starts at home. The crowd's going to be behind them. I think they'll do fine.
Maybe I'm just going to change the subject now. I was misspoke earlier, maybe. Inter Miami, 3 to 4 players going to the World Cup, but actually could be 4 to 5 players because we mentioned it last week, but I think this Casemiro thing, it has legs. I really do. And he's going to be with Brazil. And so, there's a chance Inter Miami leaves the World Cup and brings back 5 World Cup attendees or players from the World Cup. So let's talk about Casemiro, catch up on it. Last week, we heard that from Tom Bogart and Paul Tenorio, who are like MLS journalists, that Inter Miami and the LA Galaxy were interested in Inter Miami and interested in Casemiro and that it was legitimate and they were seriously considering making a move for him. And then we heard some reporters from Europe, Fabrizio Romano being maybe the most famous, also talking about Casemiro and Inter Miami. And so as this is unfolding, I do think we have a situation where Casemiro is seriously considering Inter Miami as an option. And I think Inter Miami is seriously going to put together an opportunity to make it work for him and for Inter Miami from a roster compliance perspective. And if that were to happen, I think it has more to do with Casemiro choosing this than it does Inter Miami wanting it. But I think all sides are going to try and make this happen, or at least make this a realistic option. How are you feeling about Casemiro? How are you feeling about just big names in general, but this one specifically? You feeling like we're trending like this could really happen and it's not just a rumor fly by the mill?
If you asked me this question a week ago, I would have said 30-70, with 70% being just rumors and people trying to generate clicks and sell the story. I've changed that, flipped it the other way around. I think it's 70-30, with the 30% being financial logistics if Inter Miami can make it work. I think he genuinely wants to at least consider Inter Miami as an option. I don't know if it's in his top option based on if he gets offers from Europe and what that situation looks like, but I genuinely think this is top 2-3 in his mind of places that he would like to go play. There's legs to this. The reporting that has happened on Casemiro, both from MLS reporters, but also international reporters, makes me think there's genuine legs to this, where if both parties can make it work, it will happen. And I'm super excited for that. This is one of those players that I've watched very closely over the last couple of years, 2-3 years. It's been an up and down, but the journey with Casemiro has ended on such a positive trajectory with me, because we were talking about this offline and we had a chat in the member section as well on this. But he's a player that you may not think looks pretty on the ball, does not necessarily have all the qualities of a Busquets, may not stand out in some assets, but he just gives everything on the pitch. He has that passion for the team, and it's just someone you want on your team and you enjoy having on your team. And it will be phenomenal if Inter Miami can actually make this work and pull this off. I don't know if he fits into the mold of the midfield that we want to create, how he would partner with Rodrigo de Paul, what that dynamics could look like. And we could talk about that and think about the footballing aspect of it. But from generally a vibes perspective, it's going to be so much fun to have him here. He's playing at a very, very high level right now. For those of you who haven't necessarily followed him in Manchester United, if you ask any Manchester United fan, they will tell you that if they could, they would keep him for another season, because he's been great this season. He's been scoring goals for fun off set pieces. He's an integral part of the midfield at a time when the Premier League is very physical, very athletic. He seems to have found his niche and may not be the most athletic midfielder anymore, may not be the destroyer DM that he used to be at Real Madrid, but still very, very solid, serviceable, and playing at a high level. I would genuinely enjoy this with all my heart.
You'd love to add a great player to Inter Miami. Is that what you're saying?
I'd love to add a great player with a singular name to Inter Miami. What even is his first name? Uncle Casemiro? Is that what we're calling him? Is that what his first name is? Unc?
I thought it was just Cass, right?
Cass?
Last name Amiro. No, he's actually like a world class player, and
Yes.
I understand some people will say, okay, he's 3 years past his prime, and that's fine. But so was Sergio Busquets and Jordi Alba, and they came to the MLS and they were fantastic and the best player at their position in the league, hands down. And I think Casemiro would be the same. I really do. He's not Busquets from a style perspective. I think he actually has much more of a traditional defensive midfielder sort of profile. But again, 2 years ago, not maybe 4 years ago, he and Sergio Busquets were like considered the two best defensive midfielders in the world. Well, maybe 6 or 7 years ago now, actually. But like they were the two best defensive midfielders in the world, and he has that sort of world class quality to his game, and the fact that he can still get it done in the Premier League, which is as similar is more intense than what the MLS is. And I think when you look around at some incoming players, and I say this all the time about players coming from the Argentine league, but if you're coming from a slower league where the pace of play is much slower and you aren't a particularly athletic player, like you really wonder how it's going to translate to an athletic league. But the Premier League is more physically demanding, obviously, and then obviously the talent level and technical ability is miles ahead. So the guy would have no doubt he would come to the MLS and be the best defensive midfielder in the league. And when you start like that, it really does become a luxury. I'm not sure if he's the perfect fit for Rodrigo de Paul, and some people are saying his name's Carlos is his first name. But like I also think he's so good, and Rodrigo de Paul, who would be not as good as Casemiro, like Casemiro would be the better of the two midfielders, would be as good as any midfield partnership you could have in the MLS, hands down. And so if it could happen, it would be unbelievable.
Casemiro, when he truly cares about trying and making it work, is an unbelievable baller. My only question would be, would he care if he comes to Inter Miami? I hope so. I really hope so. I thought last season with Manchester United, he was a bit lackadaisical, did not come into the season well prepped, looked a bit off pace, and didn't have a great season overall, to the point where everyone was like, yeah, he's finished. I remember the quote that Jamie Carragher made about him, leave the football before the football leaves you. Famous last words, because he's having a great season this season. But as I said, if he cares, he will put in every bit of effort, and that's such a fun player to watch. And yes, I think he'll be a phenomenal DM. He'll be great. But for me, what stands out with Casemiro is his IQ, is the mental aspect, the cerebral aspect of the game. Maybe not to the same level as Busquets, but still highly underrated. What he lacks in his athleticism, he makes up for it with his positioning. He can find a pass or two as well. He has this insane way of just finding a bounce pass over the top of the defense and getting players in behind. He can find a through ball or two. He is not afraid to tackle. I think he'll enjoy the MLS. He'll enjoy being in Miami, playing for Inter Miami. And it'll be fun to see what a combination of Rodrigo de Paul, an Argentine, and Casemiro, Brazilian, would look like, first of all. And then linking up with Messi will always be fun, because I think another underrated aspect of Casemiro is his ability to just play that 1-2 with players and get in behind and find dangerous positions in front of goal. Super exciting prospect. We'll have to see how it fits if he actually comes to Inter Miami, but just top this team up with the best players in the best positions and we'll be fine, right? That's what we need to do.
Yeah, I do think part of his talent is his ability to be an effective player going forward also, right? And he's scoring a ton of goals too. He's scoring a ton of goals this season on set. He's exceptionally good on set pieces actually. He is like better than he has any right to be on set pieces in terms of being in the box.
He has
But
his highest scoring season this season, I think.
yeah, and then the
6.
other thing is it's hard for me to judge him based on what he did last season when, if I'm remembering my years right, they fired their coach like 8 games into the season. They hired another coach and they had their worst season like ever. It's hard for me to say that Casemiro was bad when I think maybe the whole Manchester United team was having a down year. So like the fact that he can still do it at his age now, like I think is quite an accomplishment. And the fact that he can come in and be, I think, just as good as Busquets. It won't look the same. Like he's going to be more athletic. He's going to be better defensively than Sergio Busquets. Won't be quite as much of an alien in terms of not ever turning the ball over. Maybe not quite as good at picking a pass, but still better than anything Inter Miami has in the midfield right now, including Rodrigo de Paul. Like I think, it would be a lot of fun and it would really work. Maybe though it would be even better if you gave him like a 6 next to him and you put it in a midfield trio, whether that's David Ajala or Yannick Bright or whoever it would end up being. But like then you'd give both of them a ton of freedom to impact the game going forward and backwards. Would be cool. I have a feeling that's not what it would look like. I think it would be a partnership of those two, DePaul and Casemiro. But yeah, it's just fun to kind of dream about having this sort of superstar player come in and all the ways you could move the chess pieces around.
Can I ask you 2 questions that in my mind are quite interesting and could generate a fun conversation? Is he the player that you would say Inter Miami needs right now? Or do you think that's the profile that Inter Miami needs to fill in this squad? First question. Second, if this was at the start of the season where Inter Miami had an option between Berterame and Casemiro, and I know they're 2 completely different players, but it's almost about filling that DP spot. Which player would you have preferred Inter Miami to go for? Because I have an answer in my mind, but I want to hear your thoughts on this as well. Because if we had one DP spot to fill, would you have still gone for Berterame or would you have actually considered Casemiro if he was available?
I'll be honest, like just trying to go back to where I was in January. I don't know if athletic striker would have been where I went. I'm not sure Berterame would have been the player I chose, but if my 2 options were Berterame or Casemiro, it may have been Berterame. But
Denny Buanga or Casemiro, because that was Inter Miami's
I would
choice,
have
right?
I would have taken Buanga over Casemiro.
Okay. Yeah, fair.
But I would have loved to have both of them. And I think that's where we might be heading. Because I know a lot of people are saying you got to sell Berterame to open up a DP spot for Casemiro, but I don't actually think that's the case. I think, you're talking about 15 games after the World Cup. Casemiro maybe takes a little bit of an extended break after the World Cup, and he comes in and he plays, 8 to 12 games, depending on the playoff run with Inter Miami. Maybe he is willing to take sort of a cheap contract for this year and then worry about the DP money in 2027. And then you have the half season and it gets all confusing and, maybe Inter Miami can force the hand of the MLS to add an extra DP spot just to make it all work. Or then you can get rid of Berterame or whatever you have to do at that point. But I think there's a world where you can have them both. In fact, I know there's a world you could have them both if Casemiro's willing to do that. So could be fun.
Last time we got a player mid-season, they didn't play particularly well, but we ended up winning the MLS Cup. So who knows? Maybe this time we do the same.
Well, that's one thing I will say. I think Casemiro would be much better than Rodrigo de Paul. And that's not even a shot at Rodrigo de Paul. Casemiro is a world-class
I think he's a
player.
better player. Yeah.
Even if he is maybe a couple years past his prime, like he has that world-class ability that Rodrigo de Paul just never got to, and that's totally fine. Okay, let's get to some health updates. Maxi Falcone, who we almost forgot about because his replacements played so well. Falcone back in training. And then the other one is Sergio Reguilon is doing individual work, which is how we see players sort of ramp back up into team training and then getting back onto the field. Generally, it means 2 weeks-ish before that player is available to play. So I wouldn't expect Sergio Reguilon this weekend. In fact, I can tell you you're not going to get Reguilon this weekend, but it does mean he's not out for the next 3 months. which is also a good sign or a good thing to hear. Uh, on the Maxi Falcone front, how does that make you feel? Him coming back? Do you put him back in the lineup?
I don't think there's a reason to take Luhan out yet. So it'll be unfair if you actually take Luhan out because he's been unbelievably good. Unbelievably good. Let me rephrase that. He's been unbelievably good because I didn't believe he could play that way. I wouldn't take him out. I would continue with Luhan until he gives you a reason not to start him. As simple as that. And I think that's just fair, right? He's put in a shift in 3 games now where he's looked very good, very solid, better than the centre back partnership has looked with Falcone in it. And I think Falcone has to earn his spot back one way or another. And I know there's not enough games before the World Cup, and we're not playing in multiple competitions. But I do think you play Luhan for the next game against Austin and then see if there's an opportunity to bring Falcone back into the fold if Luhan doesn't perform well. But I wouldn't bring him straight back in.
I agree with you, man. Luhan's been, I think, in this case, factually, unbelievably good. And so kudos to him. He's earned the spot, man. And again, like Maxi Falcone did not get off to a particularly hot start to this season. So it's not only that, it's not that he got Wally pipped. He was kind of men, and I will tell you for a fact, we were talking about this even when we weren't particularly confident Gonzalo Lujan. We were talking about putting Mikael and Noah Allen next to each other and trying to figure it out that way. Maybe that's a better partnership. So we were already sort of thinking, okay, let's see what else we can do with our center back spot just to see what other options we have. And the fact that Gonzalo Lujan has presented himself as a real option, I think is, well, A, great for Lujan, great for Inter Miami, but also, like, let's see it keep going. Because I think the biggest thing we've said over the last week and a half about Lujan is, it's been awesome. It's been 3 games.
But it's consistency.
You give us 6 or 7 of this, maybe
Yeah.
we'll start to, truly believe in it, and it won't be so unbelievable. So that's where I'm at with that. Okay, Miami Freedom Park. Let's talk about it. Opening 48 hours from now, it will be kickoff. In fact, we're about 48 hours from kickoff. Inter Miami is doing something cool. I've never seen a team open a new stadium like this, with such like me being so personally, just me being so personally invested in the team, like I am with Inter Miami and all the time we spend on it. So I'm like very excited to see what the atmosphere looks like. I'm very excited to see what the stadium looks like on game day. I'm very excited to see how it sounds on TV. Like just getting a sense of the environment. And it's a shame we weren't able to be able to go to this opener, but I think this is as exciting as it could be, and I don't know, how are you feeling about it?
It's a mixed bag for me, and let me explain myself. Incredibly excited that Inter Miami is getting a new stadium. I think that was a dream. The dream is coming true. It's coming true on Saturday. It's going to be so fun to watch Inter Miami play in a new home stadium. The fans are going to be all for it. I hope they have a fantastic experience. I wish I was there on the day. And I just want to see what the game feels like inside the stadium, what the atmosphere is going to be, how the sound transfers across. I hope that all plays out in a manner that creates a fun, exciting atmosphere, and we get to watch this team play in a stadium where we can call home for the foreseeable future, for the long run, right? This is the long-term plan. So 25,000 backed inside new stadium. It's going to be incredible regardless. I still think there's a lot of work to be done in the sense of making it a full match going experience for the fans. So I'm not really sure how that's going to look like. And for anyone who's going to the game on Saturday, 100% have the best time, but I'm not sure what the full experience is going to be now versus compared to 6 months or a year from now, where they've opened up the area in and around the stadium as well. So I think it's only going to get better. That's what I'm trying to say. The first game is going to be incredible for the occasion, but I think it's only going to get better from here once everything around the stadium gets completed. I know they've been in a rush to complete the inside of the stadium. There's been a lot of speculation about whether they could actually make it work. They made it work. The color scheming looks fantastic. It looks like Inter Miami's personal stadium. The pitch looks beautiful. The more I think about it, the more excited I get. I know some of the season ticket holders were able to go in today and actually see it firsthand. So I'm sure it was an incredible experience to do that. But imagine Messi playing on that field. Imagine the team coming out of the tunnels for the first time. It's going to be wild, man. I'll be watching with bated breath. It should be fantastic.
I don't mean to say this as like an offense to Dry Pink Stadium or the one in Fort Lauderdale, but it certainly had the feel of like a college stadium. It's very open ended, and before Messi came and they added the
Yeah.
corner bleachers, you could kind of just walk up and watch the game from the corner. And as cool as fun as that was, it certainly didn't have the same feel as going to American Airlines Arena for the Heat or the Panther Stadium or even like it didn't feel like a professional stadium.
Hmm.
And I think this is going to feel more like that. And I think that's really cool. And also, college stadiums are awesome, so that's not a shot. It's just a different experience, and I think that I'm excited to go to the first game, and I think the fact that we get to see it this weekend and it's all going to be ready, at least the stadium atmosphere or the stadium park is going to be ready. I think it's going to be awesome. Do you think? Do you think we're going to get like a boost from it this first game?
I think so. I think the atmosphere is going to be incredible, as I've already said. I've used that word like 50 times this episode because that's what I feel. I think it's going to be an uplifting environment. The players are going to feel like they have the 12th man behind them. And this is home, man. This is the big boy stadium. As you said, we're entering a professional stadium. And these players are making history, right? The stadium is going to be there even after they've long gone left into Miami. I'm assuming the stadium is going to be there for the next foreseeable future, the long term. And they're the first starting 11 that takes the field on Saturday will have their names etched in memory. So they have an incentive to go out and win that game. The fans are going to show up. I don't have a doubt in my mind about that. And I think it's just going to create a special occasion for the players to just give their extra 30-40%. I think it's going to be a boost.
The players, I think, also got to see it for the first time today. At least, go onto the field and sort of kick the ball
Yeah,
around on the
feel it.
grass and go to the locker room. Maybe we saw Messi sign his contract there, but like as far as being there and being a part of the new atmosphere, being in the locker room, it's all new to the players too, and I think they will certainly feel like a boost because of it. And again, we've mentioned this a bunch of times, but this is the first home game of the season in the MLS, so they're going to have the full crowd behind them, and it's going to feel like home. Hopefully, it feels like home for the first time this season. And like I do wonder if they can explode because of that. I think it's going to be really cool.
If you allow me, I want to wax lyrical for a second because I'm a firm believer that a stadium is part of the club's identity. It is who the club is at its core. You build a stadium with the memories of the games that you play in there, with the heartbeat of the players who give their blood, sweat, and tears for the team on the pitch. The more you add to it, the more games you play in there, the more memories you create as fans, the more memories you create as players. It adds to the pulse of the stadium. It adds to the aura of the stadium. It adds to the identity of the club. And on Saturday, we write the first word in that book that's going to be the identity of this new Inter Miami team going forward. This is a new chapter for us as a team, right? When Arsenal moved from Highbury to Emirates, I genuinely believe they lost something of a soul when they moved stadiums. Inter Miami, I think, is going to have a different path because they're making an upgrade to now being a professional team with a full stadium to their name. And I think this genuinely means something. And as we look back on this moment, as we look back to this first game that we played at New Stadium against Austin, I hope that we're able to build a memory out of it and we are able to add to that. So if we win, that's just going to be the first of the many layers of memories that we add to the stadium, and it's going to be a phenomenal part of the Inter Miami story. This is where it begins for my liking and understanding.
Yeah.
Dude, Messi scoring that first goal is going to blow the roof off the stadium.
Well, this is what I was just going to ask. And BD says
Yeah.
the team is, and I'm sure he's joking, but he jokes. The team has been given specific instructions not to shoot until Messi scores. Does the first goal, does the first everything matter? Because I do think it would be weird if, Tadeo Allende scores the first goal at Miami Freedom Park, and not Messi. The only people I think it also could be okay for is an Ian Frey or David Ruiz or one of the homegrown kids. But really, it has, truthfully, it has to be
Honestly,
Messi.
at this point, I'll take a Herman Berterame go with New Stadium as the first one because
No.
that would mean something. He's
Could you imagine?
definitely
He gets
shedding the ghost
sold
of
in the
past.
summer. He gets sold in the summer, and his one goal is the opening goal, Miami Freedom Park. And as you said, etched in memory
Etched
forever.
in memory. Yeah, that's the first word you write on the page of the new stadium. Could you believe that?
No, but
No, I don't. It doesn't matter, man. It doesn't matter who scores the first goal. It'll eventually become a memory in itself, right? If Messi scores the first goal, I think it'll be special. Everyone's gonna love it. It'll be poetic, and it will just stamp the fact that this is the Messi era. But if it's Tadeo Allende, Matteo Silvetti, whoever it is, I hope it's an Inter Miami player that scores the first goal. Whoever it is, we're going to look back at it and be like, damn, okay, yeah, that was the player that scored the first goal at New Stadium. We're going to make a lot more memories there. So I think the first game in itself is symbolic, yeah, for sure. But I think we're going to make a lot more memories that will overpower that moment of the first goal. So I'm not really bothered about who scores as long as it's an Inter Miami player and not an Austin player.
I can tell you exactly how it's going to go. It's going to look exactly like that second game against Nashville in the CONCACAF Champions Cup, where they come out all guns blazing, pressing high, trying to create opportunities until Messi scores in the 12th minute or something like that. And then they'll back off and it'll be a whole different game. But in order to get that first goal, I think they're going to press high and really push the tempo to try and get it early and to get it at the feet of number 10. I don't know if first matter. I think it's going to matter. I think we'll see how we feel Saturday night.
Yeah.
But I do think
we're fans. We'll make it. We'll rationalize it.
Before we change the subject, I do want to say I think winning matters.
Yes, I agree.
Because I do think that you can create a mystique about your stadium and how hard it is to play there and win there for opposition if you get some stats to back it up, and if you win your first 4 games there, all of a sudden, the fans are going to believe that we are impenetrable if we bring the noise, and the team's going to think we can't lose at home, and all of those things come from proving you can be successful there, and it just builds and builds and builds. And so I can just envision there go 8 wins, 1 draw in their first 9 games at Miami Freedom Park, and you're like, this is something.
It's a fortress.
This is something. And then all of a sudden the other teams start thinking about it, and it becomes, the fans start acknowledging it, and it becomes a lifting spirit for the stadium. And that, to me, I think is real and could matter. And so I think more than anything, winning makes all the difference. Although maybe even better, winning late would be pretty cool too. Because then you're like, oh, you thought you could come in and get a point from us? No. The spirits are coming out at the end. You know what I mean? Anyways.
No, habits get etched in memory as well, and you don't want to start off on the wrong foot. So build the right habit in the first game itself, and then move on from there. I'm excited. It's going to be so much fun. Even sitting as fans in our living rooms and watching the game on TV is going to feel different. It's going to feel very different, and it's going to be a fun different.
I know. The pregame show is going to be weird because we're just going to want to watch them do all the pregame show content. But that's okay. We'll still be here. Okay, let's talk about beyond Saturday night, because it is just the first of this 10-game stretch until the World Cup, and there's 70 days until the World Cup starts. And in that time, Inter Miami is going to play 10 more MLS games. Obviously, no CONCACAF Champions Cup games. And so they have, I think, an opportunity here that is unique, where they get a chance to have low-pressure games. So my question to you is, are they actually low pressure? And if they are, what does that mean for the team, and what can we look forward to if that's the case? But let's start with if they're actually low pressure, because there's a feel-good factor to the new stadium, but the team hasn't been playing outstanding this season. And there's a lot of new players specifically that haven't blown up or been particularly impressive so far. So is this an opportunity for the team to sort of take the pressure down and maybe play better because of it? Is this an opportunity for Javier Mascherano to say, listen, it is not about winning every single game as much as it is getting healthy so that we can win healthy in like a moral sense, so that we can win the games that really matter later on. What are you hoping for? What are you expecting? What do you think?
I have a couple of thoughts on this, but first and foremost, I think I'd amend what you'd said about pressure. I think it's not low pressure. The pressure is probably still there. I'm not sure if the team will entirely be over the fact that they got knocked out of the CONCACAF Champions Cup in the first instance. So the pressure as an Inter Miami player will always exist, and an Inter Miami coach will always exist. The slight amendment I would say is it's low stakes. This is the lowest that the stakes have been since Javi Mascherano has been at Inter Miami. The next 10 games don't break or make the season in any way. If Inter Miami goes on a 10-game winning run, that doesn't change much necessarily. It puts us in a good position in the MLS regular season. But even if we don't win all 10 games, if we have a few games here and there that are off, like it's not do or die anymore. Even in Javier Mascherano's first season, the stakes were slightly higher because we were judging him as a coach. And he was in a position where if he didn't prove his worth in a good stretch of games, a healthy run of form, we would have started calling for his head quite early. He had to get the fans on his side. I think we're now at a point, at a juncture in Javier Mascherano's 1.5 years at Inter Miami, where this is the lowest that the stakes have been. They can play without the shackles. They can play without the burden of trying to always win and play those do or die games. I think the pressure is still probably there, even in their minds, because, as I said, the season hasn't started well. They are obviously cognizant of the fact that they're not playing particularly good football. But I think now is the time where you can risk it. Now is the time where you can just go out there and go back to basics. Just play foundational football. Learn stuff. Go out there, try new things, put new players on the pitch. I think you can that's why I say low stakes. You can try a lot more things and you can fail if it doesn't go your way. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Okay, but let me stop you because it feels like you just said both things are true at the same time. And like I want to be more like real about what this could potentially mean for what we see. Maybe not this weekend, because I do think this first game is a put out your best lineup and go get the victory as early as possible type of game, and it is, you know, pressure in that sense. But that's because it's the Miami Freedom Park opener. You know, 2 games later we're going to play at Colorado, then at Real Salt Lake, you know, the New England Revolution. Like there will be very much lower stake games in the coming weeks. And I think there's 2 angles to this. The first is Mascherano, and BD says, you know, Mascherano feels the pressure. He's going to try and win every game. Well, we saw last year what that looked like, and it was playing his best lineup basically every single game. And in the 2 or 3 games all year that he rotated, he just rotated everyone and said, doesn't matter. There's clearly a balance between rotating everyone and, you know, keeping your guys fresh and seeing what your whole squad has, and making sure everyone gets an opportunity to grow or show what they have and all that stuff. And then the second thing that I'm really interested in is the players, because Inter Miami put a ton of pressure on the CONCACAF Champions Cup. And a lot of players were signed with the idea that they were going to be fit and firing for the CONCACAF Champions Cup to start the season. And that was their big goal. It was their number one goal. And they said it over and over again, and their actions backed it up. Like there was no doubt Inter Miami was interested in winning that trophy over everything. And that meant they had to be on top of their game from the get-go. And they weren't. And so here they are in the sort of doldrums of their early MLS season. But on the other side of that, it's like if you're a new player and you don't have that pressure, maybe you can settle in. Maybe you can sort of let the game come to you a little bit more. You don't have to press so hard because like the pressure is, I think, a little bit lower. And it is hard for me to think the players don't feel that because the games aren't worth as much. They're just not. as a CONCACAF Champions Cup game, or even the game before you play a big game. You're trying to earn your spot for the big game, so like the pressure is still there. I think right now it's almost like let's just try and get 3 points every game, but let's also just realize it's a single MLS game.
The burden of failure is not as heavy, I think.
So
And
what does that mean though? Like, how do you think that impacts decisions, players, etc.?
we always have this conversation, and it's always like what we think versus what Javi Mascherano thinks, and it's like two different worlds that we live in. So let me start by what I think and how I think the team should approach this next stretch of games. The simple fact of the matter is that the burden of failure is not as heavy. The games don't necessarily have the same stakes. As you said, the pressure is probably not as high, which allows you to experiment, which allows you to try things on the pitch that may fail, may not work, may not go your way in certain instances, but wouldn't have the same level of consequences. That could mean the experimentation in terms of trying new formation, the experimentation in terms of trying new play styles, the way you create patterns of play. It could mean putting new players on the pitch, rotating your players from game to game. There's a lot of ways in which this team can try new things to rediscover its identity. It doesn't necessarily have to play a football in a manner that, oh no, if we go out, if we expose ourselves too much and lose the game, it's going to be all and end all. I think we're beyond that phase now, which means there's a little bit more freedom for players to express themselves. There's a little bit more freedom for Javi Mascherano to express himself. There's a little bit more freedom to try new things. And my one word for the next 10 games is experimentation. And that could mean a lot of things for this team. And I would add every single bucket that you can think of under experimentation.
So what do you want to see if you were the coach?
First thing I want to see is a use of the 4-3-3. Whether that means Messi false nine, whether that means wide forwards with Messi on the right, Berterame on the left. Like, I want to see a genuine 4-3-3 with a three-man midfield that is pressing high, using the athleticism that we've acquired over the summer and going from there. That's number one. And I'll stop there, allow you to react, and then I can move to number two. But first, I think different formation. Try something new. Doesn't have to be different players, but we can't play the 4-4-2. We can't play the conservative style of football. That's just boring. It's not fun to watch. That's not what I want to see at the new stadium. And it's not going to get us anywhere.
Yes. But okay, so I want to make sure I'm framing this, or I'm hearing you right. Because I agree with you. I think the 4-3-3 is what this team is more prepared and better set up to play.
The advanced 4-3-3, right? Not Javi Mascherano's 4-3-3. Because Javi Mascherano will find a way to justify it being a 4-3-3 and then play a 4-4-2.
Sure. But on the other hand, you're saying experimentation. So, like, I almost want to see them try other things,
Yeah.
And you made a good point on, how does a front three look if you have truly four starter level players in Allende, Berterame, Messi, and Silvetti. But the three-man midfield, I agree with you, that would be great. But that's one thing. But what if it's something else that's just not a 4-4-2? Is that also good? Will you, if we see a 3-5-2 or whatever tomorrow or Saturday night, will you be okay with that?
I think so. Yeah, why not? Go for it. Like, if it's a 3-5-2 that looks fun to watch, that's free-flowing, that's expansive, that's utilizing the best potential of these players on the pitch, I don't mind. What I don't want to see, here's an easier way to answer your question. What I don't want to see is the conservative, boring football that we play to try and keep the scoreline to 1-0 and get the 3 points. That's not what I want to see. Anything apart from that, that's expansive and fun. If it's a three-man backline, if it's a three-man midfield with a 4-3-3, if it's a diamond shape, if it's a one-man backline with Mikael sitting at the back and then us playing five in the middle, that's also fine. But no, in all seriousness, I think I'm okay with experimentation as long as it's expansive and expressive. I want the players to enjoy themselves on the pitch. I don't want them to be afraid of conceding a goal. Play a higher line if you have to. Go for the press if you have to. Like, stuff like that.
Not first of all, I agree with you. I just want to make sure we're like clarifying what we're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
I also would love to have Inter Miami come out of this 10-game stretch with a different formation as their primary formation. And I'm fine with experimenting over the next next 2 months because like I think we've gone and seen the best of what 4-4-2 has to offer in the way that Mascherano plays it. And it's like you kind of need luck when you're playing against the best teams. And when you're playing against bad teams, you can, have your day and you can go for, 4-goal halves or whatever. But like in the biggest games against the best teams, you do kind of need luck. And I think this team is good enough where they can actually line up and just outplay teams that are good or that are good by MLS standards without relying on things going their way in that particular game and an own goal or, an opposition player getting an injury or whatever it is. So I would like to come out of this 10-game stretch with a different formation. And if there's 3 games that have a 4-4-2, just to, compare them game week to week, I'm okay with that as long as we're also getting plenty of sort of other looks and other structures. And, if it morphs into a 4-2-2, like, and it's still on paper a 4-4-2, but it is a different style, like I don't know if that is something I would like to see, but like I can understand the idea behind trying different things. And I agree with you. Like, as long as it plays differently, I'd be really interested in it.
And also, I just want to caveat, like experimentation, not for the sake of experimenting, right? Like Javier Marciano could just be like, oh yeah, for the next 10 games, I'm going to try some stuff. And then when it's back to playing important games, I'm just going to go back to no, that's not the point I'm trying to make. I think experimentation with the aim of trying to move towards something new, an identity that's different, a pattern of play that's different, and eventually coming to a point that doesn't look anything like the 4-4-2. I think that's what I'm trying to get at. Find a new style of playing. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Okay, 100% agree. And if that didn't go without saying, I apologize.
No, yeah, I also didn't articulate that at the start, so I just wanted to make sure I was clear.
Part of that to me is a 3-man midfield. Like we've seen it so rarely under Mascherano, and he's so quick to go away from it. Like he will try it irregularly, and then if it's not amazing, if it is amazing, he'll stick with it for an extra game or two. But the minute it's not ultra impactful, he kind of reverts back to his sort of preferred formation. So I would like to see like more than half these games have a 3-man midfield in whatever form that takes. The other thing I think is sort of a must-do for this team. Well, before I get there, we started this by you saying you'll let me respond, but you had a number 2. What is your number 2?
I actually thought of a number 3 as well while we were talking about that. But my number 2 is, I think, quite obvious. I need to see more of the young players perform. And Daniel Pinter is a case in point. You give them some minutes, whether it's towards the end of the game, whether it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes. If they show that they're able to belong, if they're able to perform for this team and are ready for more minutes, doesn't mean that you have to start them, doesn't mean that you have to play them every game. But I do need to see a pathway for some of these young players to get more minutes on this team over the next 10 games. There's plenty of talent there for them to hang with the best. Even in games which we're playing against a lower opposition, I think then even more so, I wouldn't be afraid of starting Daniel Pinter in a game against, well, Austin maybe not, but like some of the lower level oppositions, go for it. But point being, give them more minutes. They deserve more minutes. They need to be integrated into the squad. Javi Mascherano needs to use the full roster. That's my number 2. I have to see that.
With the first team.
With the first team, yes.
That was the thing about this game against NYCFC that we came away so excited about is Daniel Pinter came on in the 63rd minute with Messi on the field. Like, it wasn't like Inter Miami did a full line change where all the, A-tier players came out and you had sort of 2 or 3 starters left in, and then that's where the kids got minutes. Like, he came in with the A team and, by the way, had an impact that was positive, and he played 27 minutes, and it was great. And that is the type of thing that will help him improve over the course of the season, so that in case you have an alien abduction or in case you have a player that just hits bad form, which we've seen before, like you have options that you can go to because you've built faith in them when you were just giving them 25 minutes, so that if you need them for 90 minutes, you feel like they can do it. And that applies, same thing in that NYCFC game with David Ruiz, who's a guy we haven't seen a ton of under Javier Mascherano.
Exactly.
they can come in and make an impact with the first, like the A team. And that is, I think, the key caveat for me, where if we just picked two of these games and did full rotation, okay,
That's not it.
fine. But that's not what we're talking about here.
You know what it is? Under Javi Marciano, some of the fringe players have only played when we needed to rest the starting 11. That's not what the sign of a healthy squad is. For me, what I need is your roster should be 15 players. Your roster should be 16, 17 players that you can trust to bring on at any point.
20.
20 players. Honestly, yes. But that's probably too generous for Javi Marciano. So you need to keep these players ready. You need to keep these players fresh so that when they need to be brought on, when they need to substitute for some players who might have an alien abduction or need to be rested, they're ready to go. They're not cold and being brought in from the cold to just try and have an impact out of the blue. No, you have to keep them hot. You have to keep them fresh. You have to keep them integrated. Treat
And
them
they
as part of the squad. Sorry.
and they can help you. Like, I think that's the
Yeah.
other thing is
Yeah.
we've seen enough from some of these guys that they can actually help you win games. And Daniel Pinter, I think, is the best example where Tadeo Ende started the game against NYCFC rightfully because he is the sort of senior player and he's big money and all that stuff. But when he wasn't having a good game, you brought in another player and he was able to have a better impact. And like that's what the young kids can actually offer you. It's not just pity minutes for young kids. It's like they can actually compete with your best, maybe not your best players, but anyone that's not one of your two or three best players on the team. So I agree with you. I think we need to see that more. Okay, what's your number three?
And you may not completely agree with this, but for me, number three, and we have never seen this under Javi Mascherano, maybe once or twice, I want to sometimes play the opposition. I want Javi Mascherano to show tactical nuances against the opposition that we're trying to play. Not just run the same exercise against every opposition and hope that our players pull away because of talent. Show some tactical nous, some understanding of how a team in the MLS is different from a West Coast team versus a East Coast team. How DC United plays slightly different from Orlando City. You can't go into every game having the same game plan. I'm pretty sure in Javi Mascherano's mind, he's going into these games planning for the team that he's playing. But a lot of the times, more or less, it looks the same from one game to the next. I want to see a little bit of tactical smarts from Javi Mascherano to try and see how he adapts to different oppositions. Now, again, as I said, you may not agree with this. You might have seen otherwise. But in my mind, I've not seen Javi Mascherano do that enough, prove that enough. And the MLS is very diverse in the kind of teams you come across. You can't have the same game plan against every team. I want to see different things. So going back to our first point, yes, have a base formation that you play off of, but don't be afraid to change to a back three if you think that's probably what's going to work best and you need wide forwards or wide fullbacks to break down the opposition. Don't be afraid to go to a three-man midfield, a genuine three-man midfield if you have to. Don't be afraid to press for 90 minutes if that's what you think the opposition suffers again. So stuff like that.
I actually am going to disagree with you on this, and here's why. Because as useful as that is, as like a skill to have for Javier Mascherano, and on the one hand, this is like a prime opportunity for him to kind of play the opposition as opposed to playing Inter Miami. I actually think Inter Miami needs to work on Inter Miami this period of time. And so we'll get into next the biggest talking point. But like I actually think Inter Miami needs to get better at playing Inter Miami ball and figuring out exactly what Inter Miami ball is. So as the stakes are a little bit lower and the urgency, I think, is down a little bit, like figuring out exactly what Inter Miami ball is and getting good at it and not resorting to Mascherano ball, but figuring out what's best for Inter Miami and this Inter Miami 2026.
Yeah, I guess you have to build the foundation before you actually start building the rest of the floors. But 1 and 3 contradictory, but let's keep that in the back pocket to see if that happens at any other point during the season, I guess.
Well,
If
and
not just 10 games.
I do think Inter Miami is in a unique spot with regards to that because they are good enough to impose their style of play on anyone. And this, of course, there will be games where they just kind of don't have it. But you can't go into the game thinking you're not going to have it. And so go in expecting to like play your style and force the other team to play the game you want to play. Like I actually think this is a pretty good opportunity to kind of get better at doing that. And then maybe second half of the season when we figure out exactly what Inter Miami is, it'll be more time to sort of play the opposition. So we'll disagree on that one, but I don't think it's like a bad idea generally. I just like this period of time is a great opportunity to get better at being Inter Miami. Okay. The biggest one. Did you have a fourth one?
That's it. I can think of one if you give me like 5 minutes.
No. The biggest one is Herman Berterame. And what is the plan here? Because here's the thing. I think when they signed him, they had an idea. And I almost think we can say the idea didn't work. I asked you on March 9th how long you were going to go until you got nervous. And you said 5 games. And it's been 4 games. So Saturday night will be the 5th game before you said you would get nervous. That actually has to be priority number 1, I think, is seeing if he can actually be a DP player, because as much flack as we've given him and for as little as he's shown so far, he's gotten 5 starts, 7 games played, maybe 6 games played actually. Like it has been a very small sample size, and if he... Not that we've seen anything that would indicate he was going to go on some crazy run, but if he did go on some crazy run, there's a way we could look back on him at the end of the season and think, it was 5 games at the beginning of the season. It's not a big deal. So I think that's actually has to be priority number 1 for him, because the other thing is at the end of these 10 games, you're going to get into the next like window. And if it still looks as bad as it's looked, you might have to start having conversations about what is the future. And so now that the pressure's gone, I was very strongly advocating that they shouldn't start him against Nashville in the second leg. But now that the pressure to win immediately is gone, I do think you have to figure out what is your $15 million striker actually good at, and what is he worth, and what can he do that made you think he was worth $15 million. And I think that actually has to be priority number 1 for these 10 games. Because if you come away from these 10 games without him looking like a DP, even if he scores 2 or 3 goals, like it's bad, because then it's no longer a small sample size.
Yeah, I think at this point, every conversation I start with Herman Berterame, the first thing I'll say is I feel so bad for him. He's only played 5 games. That's like nothing. It's a new team, new style of playing, so many different things. The expectations on him when he came into this team were astronomical, and honestly, that's setting any player up for failure. It's hard place to be. But he knew what he was signing up for. He knew exactly this fact that he would need to start hot. He would have to win the fans over by scoring goals, and he signed up for this. So it's unfortunate, the situation that we're in with Herman Berterame, but it's the reality, and we're now at a point where, okay, questions are going to have to be answered. I'm not saying that against Austin, if he doesn't score, I'm putting my hands up and saying sell him. But I need to at least see opportunities. I'm going to be nervous. I'm already nervous. My ears are a little bit red. I'm sweating a little bit. But the biggest issue has been, and what you said towards the end of your point, is that we haven't seen anything that looks good or gives us hope that he's going to go on this run of 10 games or he'll score like willy-nilly at will. We've seen none of that. And that's what I need to start. Like, if we're talking about building blocks, going step by step, that's what I need to start seeing. Against against Austin, I want to see him at least have 4 shots in front of goal. Yes, he skies 2. The goalkeeper says a couple. But if he's showing that there are patterns of play between him and Messi, between him and Tadeo Allende, like, show me something that makes me hopeful. And then we can talk about you actually scoring goals. And then we can talk about you scoring goals in bunches. but it's long time coming now. I think I would have forgiven him if the first 5 games had played out without him scoring a goal, but him actually getting in front of it and trying some things, that's not even happened. So I feel like we're starting from not just zero, we're starting from the negatives. And he has a long way to build trust now. 10 games, anything could happen, things could change, but show us something, man. We are fans. We're willing to grab onto even scraps if you give us that, but show us something.
Here's where it gets really tough. Is if you asked me what is Inter Miami's best formation, like I could give you an idea of how I would want this team to play. And if you asked me like what is the best way to defend, like I could give you an idea how do you best use Ian Frey. Like the thing that is tough with what we've seen from Berterame so far is if you asked me how do you get more out of him right now with this team, like I don't even know what they should try and do with him, which is tough because, you know, he's supposed to be a really good player. And so I do feel bad for the whole situation, but also there's a reason the coaching staff gets paid a lot of money and there's a reason the player gets paid a lot of money.
I was going to say,
figure it out.
We're just two bozos on a podcast. What do we know about scoring goals?
I want to be clear. I'm a knucklehead, not a bozo.
Fair enough. Yes.
It is tough, I think, because as you said, if there was anything that you saw, man, just 2 or 3 times a game, and it's just we're not, as a team, figuring out how to get ourselves in that position enough, you can kind of work into that position. You can sort of practice working into that position so you can sort of, you know, exploit what you think your partnership is. But it's been so little so far that it is really, really tough for me to even sort of conceptualize how this works. Granted, knowing that I'm just a knucklehead that doesn't know everything about this game. So it is hard. I think that's the most important thing for these next 10 games is figuring out how to make this work, because if it looks like this by the time we get to the World Cup break, it will have been 17 games, which, by the way, is a full Liga MX season.
Yeah.
You know, the Apertura 17, the Clausura 17 games. Like, we have a problem at that point with Berterame. And A, we'll never buy another player from Monterrey. And B, we're gonna have to figure out what we can and want to do with him, because like there will come a point, as we got to last week or 2 weeks ago, where he shouldn't be on the field in important games. And if that's where we're at in the Leagues Cup, that's a problem. It's a problem.
Yeah. Houston, we have a problem.
Here's my fun fact. The last game I went to at Drive Pink Stadium was against Austin. I moved away from South Florida a couple days later. And here we are, first game at Miami Freedom Park against Austin FC. I think it's the first time we played them since. But yeah, little fun fact, personal story. It all comes around. There's a couple questions in the chat that we could answer real quick. So I'll give it to you, Saur. Ash says, at what point do our players tune Mosh out and manage themselves?
When he gets fired.
I don't think there's a players that can do that.
No.
Like, I think Messi can do that. I think Suarez can do that. I don't think the rest of the team is like at that point in their careers or development where they can do that.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
And then Ash, I think this is the biggest one. Will the board blame Berterame or Mascherano for the disappointment? Such an interesting question.
I think this is the existential question at the end of the season, depending on how it goes.
I think it's the existential question at the end of these 10
at the end
games,
of the summer,
if they have it, if it's still not working.
Yeah.
Okay.
So much to look forward to.
I know.
10 games, man. 10 games.
Miami Freedom Park. It's 48. We're 48 hours away from halftime of the first game.
I'm super excited for that. Yeah.
Okay, guys, we will be back for the pregame show in the hour before kickoff. I hope you guys will join us if you're not going to the game. If you are going to the game, please find a way to tell us how it was, because I think the two of us are dying to see what the experience is like, and we're going to have to figure out how we can get down there at some point later this season. But until then, hope you guys have a lovely night. We'll see you guys next time. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in. Do us a favor and hit that like and subscribe button. Since our first viewer, sharing this with you all has been the very best part. So from the beginning until the end, thank you for being a part of this and have a wonderful day.